The iMore Show is brought to you today by SoftLayer, an IBM company. SoftLayer delivers a cloud built to compete. Your business applications and compute workloads are different from anyone else's, so you deserve cloud resources that meet your unique needs. SoftLayer is cloud infrastructure foundation of all of IBM cloud products and services. And I want you to know that all of our listeners have the opportunity to get $500 off cloud infrastructure by visiting softlayer.com/podcast. That's softlayer.com/PODCAST. Whew. Hey everyone, it is August 28, 2015. I'm Rene Ritchie, and right now we're going to be talking about the upcoming Apple event, new iPhones, new Apple TVs, and all that is new in the world of Apple. This is the iMore Show. Joining me today, as always, we have the incredibly book-savvy Serenity Caldwell. How are you doing, Ren?
I'm doing great. I'm about to take off on a trip to Chicago, but until then, I get to hang out with you fine folks.
Until then, you're selling thousands and thousands of Apple Music books.
Yes!
Woohoo, so great. Also joining us, we have Georgia Dow. How are you doing, Georgia? Fresh off her giant psychology tour?
Yes. I'm doing really, really wonderfully well.
You gave a talk to like a couple hundred people last night before?
Yeah, we gave a talk. We're launching like a anxiety treated at home video series, and so we got to launch it. It was a lot of fun. I'm a little tired, but besides
I'll ask you about it at the end of the show. Also joining us, very special guest, the incomparable Jason Snell. How are you, Jason?
Hello. I'm doing well. Giant psychology sounds to me a little bit like the psychology of giants. So we'll
roll
do some,
D20.
Yeah, we'll do some D&D later.
You think giants have inferiority complexes?
Yeah, I think so. They take up so much space. I gotta feel like everybody's looking at them.
Seating in an airplane is such a problem. All right, so we have so much to discuss. I'm going to get us going. First up, Apple has put out invitations for their traditional September. It used to be a September music event back in the day, but it has become a September iPhone event. I'm going to start with you, Jason, because you had this up on 6 colors. Anything out of the ordinary? Is this like WWDC now for Apple? It just happens every year?
Yeah, well, so far, yeah, I think that's basically it. This is the September event. It happens every year in September. It happens pretty much. It's the same day as last year at this point. So Apple likes this early September event. It's a good time. It fits in with their production cycle for whatever they're targeting to release the new hardware and to get it in the channel in time for the holiday quarter, because October, November, December, as people who look at Apple's financial background documents that they have to file, that's the big quarter of the year. That is by far. Apple is a very seasonal company. Even though you would think something like an iPhone wouldn't be seasonal, it's seasonal. The holiday quarter, so there's just a huge spike. Some of that driven by the fact that there are new iPhones. Some of it driven by the fact that there are gift-giving periods in there. But it's big, and so they need to launch it, and this is their big shot. This is the most watched Apple event of the year, too. As you know, from my days in Macworld, I can tell you, and you guys probably see it in your stats too. You know, we Apple fans get excited. You know, the Mac watchers, the Apple watchers are like, oh, WWDC, we'll dig into the future of operating systems. No, it's people want to know about the iPhone. That's it. That bottom line, people want to know about the iPhone, and this is that. So here we are, September 9th again.
There's a couple of big websites who will not tell you on the record, but off the record tell you that this is bill paying day. This is like Black Tuesday or Black Wednesday for them. It's when all the ad money comes in.
Yeah, it's a big day. It is a huge day, and for people in our business, it is the start of the high season in a way, because you're going to get all the interest about the iPhone, all the interest about iOS, and then that's going to roll into whatever else they announce there. Potentially, new iPads coming this fall as well, a new version of OS 10, and so it just kind of keeps on rolling, and it becomes a very, very busy few months for all of us.
What if anything, did you take away from the invitation? I mean, it was more blatant than most years, Ren.
Well, yeah, I mean, hey Siri, give us a hint. I think in part that was a little bit of fun having on Apple PR's part. Siri has since its release basically been a font of sarcasm and occasional jokes. Hey Siri, where can I bury a body? So integrating this into their latest event, I think, is a fun little bit of cheek tuckery on their part. Um, I don't know if it's necessarily blatant because Siri is not really giving away anything. We knew that Siri is going to be involved because it's going to be a new iPhone. Of course, people saw that and also thought, oh, well, new iPhone. Could it also be a new Apple TV that has Siri enabled? And the criminologists, is that the right?
Criminologists, yes.
Yeah, the criminologists have been all over this. They're like, yeah, let's figure out all of the hidden meanings inside this tiny little half picture.
It's funny because some people were saying they want an automated Siri, like they want an on-device Siri. Some people are saying it's Siri on the Apple TV. Some people are saying Siri's going to host the thing and Tim's going to take the day off. I mean, I don't know how that works.
I would really enjoy, just to put it out there, a Siri keynote. I mean, I think it would get boring after about 10 minutes, but I think it would be hilarious to be like, and here to introduce proactive on the iPhone is Siri. And then Siri walks you through what her day looks like. Man, I have to deal with all of these terrible humans. In the morning, I have to play yoga music. Yoga music is the worst.
You terrified me there for a minute by saying Siri walks, and I thought, Siri walks out on stage. Revealed.
The end is nigh.
Well, Georgia, you're born on Judgment Day. Does it actually concern you that Siri will at one point decide that the best way she could serve us is to get rid of us?
You know what? It's something I think about every now and then as I talk to my phone and it sends me to dials the wrong number that I have to deal with. It was funny because I was looking through the invitation, and Jason, I have to ask you, the invitation itself is in 6 colors.
Yeah, Apple, not too long after I announced my site, which of course invented the concept of a 6-color Apple logo.
Right.
Right. The Apple seems to have whoever's designing their stuff seems to have embraced the fact that there are those 6 colors in Apple's history, and that they did one that was the explicit rainbow logo, and they're using it in other ways too, and I think it's adorable. Just aside from my site being referencing that, I think it's great that there's somebody at Apple who thinks, this is part of our legacy. Let's not bury it. Let's use it. So my question is, will we see a rainbow Apple logo at some point in the next few years, even if it's just in one slide or one ad? Watch for it.
I would love that.
Well, we've seen the rainbow Apple logo in part with the Pride flag.
Yeah, and the stickers, right? The stickers commercial had a rainbow Apple logo in it too. So it's out there. It's out there. Those 6 colors are out there.
There are only so many years that we can go through doing plated chrome and aluminum and black.
Yeah. Well, and I think style-wise, I mean, it was good. At the time that they got rid of it, it was overdue, that it felt very 70s. But the fact is, these days, actually lots of things are very 70s, and it's sort of cool again. So I think there's something to be said for Apple working that stuff, its old identity back in as part of its current identity, its style.
The event takes place, as widely speculated, on September 9th. We're going to be there. Jason's going to be there. So far, we'll get more into this later in the show, but so far, Jason, iPhones, maybe an Apple TV. This is not traditionally Mac or iPad month.
Yeah, usually the iPads are October, right? So I don't know. I don't know if there's anything behind the rumors that the iPad might appear at this event. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's not how they've done it in the past. It would really be kind of a sad story if Apple's trying to boost the iPad and say they're bullish on the iPad, to just roll an iPad update into the back end of the iPhone event. It seems like it's wrong. And if they truly have an iPad Pro coming down the pipe, they're going to want to show that off, and they're going to want an event to do it, and everything is going to get swamped in the new iPhones. So I'm skeptical that we're going to see iPad until, in October they're going to have OS 10 presumably. It'll probably come a little bit later. They might have some new Mac models. That's a good time to launch the iPad as well. They've got so much stuff that they have to launch for this huge quarter that they can't do it all, and I think they shouldn't do it all in one event.
Yeah, I've heard no iPads too.
Yeah, I've got to assume that was a rumor misheard, and that whatever that they actually heard was something along the lines of, when talking about iOS 9, we might briefly talk about the iPad features of iOS 9 in this event, which is not the same at all as introducing a new iPad.
No, unless they do some weird, wacky press release dump to get some old models out of the way. But even then, they could wait. There's no pressing need for this.
There's no point.
And they want to be able to really fully, when they have like, something that's coming out new, you want to spend the time so that that's when it's going to be unveiled, instead of having people be writing about many things, to have one thing that they're going to be dealing with, which is the new iPhones, and then they can go through with the new iPads at the iPad event.
One thing that was delightful is that Apple, and I heard from a little birdie that maybe this wasn't so much a PR thing as, as something that surprised and delighted a lot of people in the company. They actually got Siri involved in all this. So you can say, give us a hint.
I can neither confirm nor deny that I am not authorized either to confirm or deny that. I cannot disclose anything that you would then have to confirm. In any case, I would deny it. Got it?
Oh, Siri, you tease.
Oh,
There's about 9 of them. I mean, like, the engineers must have had some fun there. There's like, I don't know, go ask a rumor blog, and like, I've already given you a many-colored hint. I mean, it's just delightful.
yeah.
I think that it's a brilliant idea, though, because it gets people actively involved with the release of their event. So even if you're not a huge techie, you could do this, you could be involved in the process, and you could try to find out what might be happening, what we might be getting. And so I think that it's a really smart idea, because once people are involved in a product, they're more invested. That's just the psychology of what we like. We like to be part of the process, and this actively allows us to be part of the process with it, and it's so cute.
So one thing that Siri didn't do is that Siri did not email Jim Cramer. Siri made Tim Cook do that all on his own. And this
Tim Cook might have emailed through Siri, but
Siri emailed Jim Cramer. What would you like to tell Jim Cramer? But so the stock markets were being nervous because China is sort of a gray box. No one really knows what's going on there, and the markets are having trouble lately. And because Apple, it's their second biggest market, might be their biggest market eventually. They were worried about Apple in China, so Apple stock started plummeting. And Tim Cook took the unusual, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but the unusual step of emailing beloved TV personality Jim Cramer. Well, actually, as I understand it, Jim Cramer emailed Tim Cook. He said, "I'm going on TV at 9 o'clock. I'm going to be covering this. Is there anything that you can give me to add to my coverage?" And Tim Cook responded about an hour before the show went on, about 8 a.m. And then CNBC tweeted out the letter. Jim Cramer went on. What did you think of this, Jason? I mean, both from Tim Cook doing it and just years of covering Apple in general.
I so want to do my Jim Cramer impression here, but I don't want to blow out everybody's speakers. No, it's, I heard from Tim Cook. Oh my God, that guy needs to cool down a little bit. Take a nice spend some time in a hot tub maybe. I don't think Tim Cook said a whole lot more than he said before. I think this was about restating. Apple likes to recycle a lot of the things that it's already said publicly. I mean, we've all noticed this, that Tim Cook will say something and people are like, "Oh, Tim Cook appeared at this event and said something," or "This Apple executive appeared at this event and said something." And usually that's something we've actually heard before. And it's not really news. They said it somewhere else first. And occasionally they'll roll out something new, obviously. But Apple being bullish on China, Tim Cook, as Ren and I know from having typed a transcript of it, Tim Cook went on and on about China at the quarterly call. So I don't feel like there was anything really new here. This is about just calming people down and saying, look, it's going to be fine in the long term. Look at you can do the math. Like, this is a country 4 times the size of the population of the United States with a growing middle class. It's going to be the equivalent of it's going to be Apple's largest market eventually. Like just the numbers, the way the math works. So calm it down. It's going to be fine. And I think that's. I mean, we'll see if the regulators want to ping them for something that they said that was a new disclosure. But I'm not sure I saw any new disclosures there.
Yeah, they were upset about App Store numbers, I think, and the last 2 weeks. I'm not sure. And do you remember?
No, I mean the only thing that the SEC might get Tim Cook on was saying that our numbers so far this year look to disprove the theory that China is tanking readily. But if I believe, I'm not an expert on SEC law, so if I'm completely wrong here, but yeah, go for it. But I believe if Cramer asked for a public comment and Tim Cook that email was designed to be broadcast publicly from the start, I think they're in the clear. It's only if it's private disclosure or if Cramer traded stocks based on that. But I'm assuming
the problem, though, is that he does have Apple stock, and it was through emails. But usually, you're allowed to give private information to journalists for public disclosure after. And so I don't think that the SEC is going to come down on Tim Cook. This was not, he said right away that he didn't mind having it shown. That's why it was given to the TV. This was not something that people found afterwards, that, you know, this was a private email exchange.
Hey Jim, psst, psst. Hey Jim.
This was this was made for public consumption from its inception, and you're allowed to do that with journalists for the public, which, you know, made a huge difference to the stock. So
yeah, what's the psychology of that? I mean, everyone panicked and started selling, and then Tim Cook says, "Hi, this is Tim. Everything's good," and then everyone stops.
It's the Southern drawl. Even in email, it's calming.
This is Tim. Just calm it down. Everything's going to be okay. Just get a glass of warm milk and buy more Apple stuff.
Do you breathe in?
Do you fight mob mentality with mob mentality, Georgia? Is that what this is?
I think that it shows, one, that we do trust that Apple says what it does and does what it says, which is a really nice set for Apple. But I also think that it's how much Apple actually controls the stock exchange. Apple holds a huge percentage now of whatever happens with Apple has to do with the entire world global economy. And so I think that everyone that deals in stocks gave a little bit of a sigh of relief and had to say, like, thank you, Tim Cook, for helping us all out.
America's coach, Tim Cook.
Yeah. Yeah, but we're kind of made to follow. We're kind of made to be to follow the group. We like to think of ourselves as exceptionally individualistic, but we're not. We're actually meant to follow the tribe, and we're meant to follow the tribe leaders. That's the way that when we worked in the only way that we survive as defenseless little tiny creatures was to work in large groups and then to follow what we think is the best advice to that. And so we're much less individualistic than we would like to believe, and that's why advertising works, and why if someone that we really like is saying, you know what, you should buy this product, it does actually increase the chances, if we like that person, that we're going to say, well, then I must also like this product because you want to say that you use this product, so do I. We're the same. That's
how my Vine efforts are being funneled, Georgia.
Right.
All right, so Serenity, in stranger news, and you and I were talking about this morning and just didn't know what to make of it. Ian Rogers, who came to Apple from Beats and basically spearheaded a lot of Apple Music, especially Beats Radio. I mean, he hired Zane Lowe. He's leaving Apple to take a job at an undisclosed but not competitive European company.
This is very, I mean, again, we talked about this before the program. This is very odd to me. Apple Music definitely had some stumbling blocks out the gate, but it was in no way, to me resembled the same kind of fiasco that we've seen with Maps in the past or with other Apple blunders. There was no reason, at least from my point of view, for someone has to take the fall. Like, Apple Music has had its share of bugs, and there are definitely things that it needs to fix. But all in all, it's been a fairly positive, lukewarm to positive reaction on Apple Music, being like, this is cool. It has some bugs, and we're probably going to wait a couple months to see how that works out, but it's still pretty cool. And of course, there's Beats One, which Ian Rogers is a huge part of. I don't understand where this move is coming from, especially because he seemed very, I guess we haven't heard a lot from him in the press since Apple Music's release, and it's possible that he just got jaded with the program, or decided that he wanted to do something else now that it was off the ground. But in the months leading up to Apple Music, he seemed very, very passionate. Like, this was very much his baby to get off the ground and put together. So I'm not sure if it's just, it just rubs me the wrong way. Like, something's up here.
Yeah, and he's been tweeting about. He tweets almost like he's a program manager for the station.
Yeah, I mean, he has been very, very involved. Like, he's not what you'd think of like a corporate overlord. Like, he was very much in the fold, going to the stations. He met with journalists during the preview and was like talking nonstop about it to pretty much anybody who would listen.
So, Jason, this doesn't sound like a paper master, or I forget the gentleman who was given the door after Mobile Me. It doesn't sound like the Maps with Williamson or Forrestal eventually. Does this just happen? Is this what happens in relationships?
Well, I hate to speculate about people's jobs, but I guess here I go. This was an acquisition. He was the CEO, so I think there's a scenario here where, as part of this, like somebody at Apple decided, maybe even as the acquisition was going on or before the acquisition, saying, look, in the long run, you're gonna not stay. Like in the long run, we want you here for a year, we want you here for 9 months or whatever like that. And then at some point, prepare your exit. We will pay you through the end of 2015, and you can stay. In the last half of the year, leave at some point because we don't need somebody at your level to manage this. We've got people at Apple who are going to do it. It could be that simple.
Which happens a lot, right?
Yeah, it absolutely happens where they're like, we're going to pay you a lot of money as part of the acquisition and part of your own personal thing, but we don't want you, and we want you to continue the integration and all of that, and then at some point you're just going to go out the door, and that's possible. It's possible that they were dissatisfied with him in some way, and that they showed him the door after the fact, and it was unanticipated. It's also possible that he read the writing on the wall in terms of how hard it is to integrate two companies like this, and decided that he was going to start pursuing other opportunities because he knew in the long run he didn't want to stay with this. So those are all scenarios that are up there, and that's all we know. So all we really know, bottom line, is that the guy who was the CEO of Beats Music is going to not be at Apple anymore. And what does that mean in terms of what the offering is going forward?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Apple Music is losing its only visionary here. I mean, obviously we still have Jimmy Iovine, we still have Dre, we still have
Trent Reznor.
Trent Reznor, whose name I can't pronounce on the podcast today.
Idina Menzel.
Yeah, but there are still good people behind Apple Music, and I don't think it's a warning sign for Apple Music at all. But it does concern me a little bit, just in that, as Jason was saying, there are all kinds of potential political and non-political movements in this arena. But it does strike me as odd that Ian was very much the front-facing member of he and Jimmy Iovine were like the two people sort of being put forward to press to just as the public face of Apple Music. And it seems odd that somebody who they really only wanted around for a year, or even if he only really wanted to be around for a year, to have them just to have him be on the national stage and then just quietly be like, yeah,
leave the country.
I'm going. Yeah, I'm literally leaving the country. I mean, I am sure there are good reasons for it. And again, like Jason said, I don't want to speculate too much on the man's personal and job life. It's just it's a little disappointing to me because I thought that he was doing good work, and the people he worked with seemed to like him. So.
And it could even be that he decided that he did that. It's a huge pressure. It's a lot of stress. And maybe he said, you know what? I did it. I launched it. It was successful. And now I want to do something a little bit more low key, spend more time maybe with my family and enjoy something different. I think that people often think that bigger is better, and that's not always the case. And it's not always the most healthy of decisions either.
Yeah, there's a famous Silicon Valley saying that our family wants to spend more time with our money. Take a quick break so I can tell you about Red Hat. Red Hat is tried, tested, and trusted. It is enterprise software. It is enterprise open source software, and that is simple, but it is not easy. So what does it mean when every commercial bank in the Fortune 500 relies on Red Hat for enterprise software? Every department in the executive branch of the US government, every airline in the Fortune Global 500. It means that more than 90% of all companies in the Fortune 500 understand the value of supported enterprise open source software. Open source software includes stuff like the Darwin kernel and the BSD networking in OS 10 and in iOS. It includes things like the WebKit rendering engine in Safari. We all use open source software every day. But when you want to use it in enterprise, it takes a little bit of work. I mean, you could do it all yourself, but then you're spending time instead of money, and not everyone has time, and certainly not everyone has expertise, and that's where Red Hat comes in. Red Hat lets you have the power and the affordability of open source software with the security and the confidence of a managed environment. They'll do all the heavy lifting for you. They make sure you get all the benefits without any of the risk. No one else can make that promise, much less keep it. So visit redhat.com to see how they help you and your enterprise with application development, storage, cloud computing, and so much more. Red Hat, different for the sake of better technology. This one hits near and dear to my. I know nowhere nearly as near and dear as Ren's, but it hits near and dear to my heart too. And that is Apple is apparently going to be getting rid of their one-on-one program, which is where you paid $99 when you bought a Mac and you would get one-on-one training. And my mom went to it. She wrote an article for us on it, and she loved it. They showed her how to use things like Calendar on her iPhone and Mac, like get them to sync together, which sounds simple to a lot of people, but to some people who technology is either awkward or inaccessible or alienating, that's huge for them. That gives them, that empowers them. And I understand, Ren, that Apple is changing, that there's so many people there that maybe that wasn't the most efficient use of specialists or creatives, but I'm still going to be a bit sad.
Yeah, as a former creative, a former trainer, I wrote a little bit about this on iMore, and I actually talked a bit about this on Jason's show, Clockwise. Ooh. But it bums me out in that, this is a really, really special program that, granted, was designed in the age of Apple needing evangelists for its products, right? It needed to bring people into the fold, especially people who had maybe never used a Mac before and weren't quite sure how to go about it, or an iPhone. And the one-to-one program was a great way to build long-lasting fans of the service and of the computers, because it's like, all right, we're not going to just, we're not going to lecture at you, and we're not just going to be like, yeah, okay, so click this and click that and click that. It was guiding them on a journey through their computer and giving them highly, hyper-focused information that they could then use to further develop their own projects or their own creative endeavors, or even their own work endeavors going forward. And to lose that from the store is a blow from the evangelist angle. I feel like Apple is getting very big now, and Apple doesn't necessarily need those hardcore fans and building those hardcore fans the way that they used to. But that doesn't mean I'm not sad to see that part of it go. I feel like the reason why Apple became, why Apple has endured throughout the history, through its ups and downs, is that it made good products that people were passionate about. And while I think the group workshops that they'll be replacing this with are still useful and are still valuable, and people can still ask questions and go into an Apple store and talk to somebody, it's not quite the same. And I worry about, I think people who would have taken advantage of the one-to-one sessions may not go to a workshop because they don't like the idea of learning in a big group environment is scary, especially when you're older. And I just worry that, it's shutting a door. It's shutting a door to people who don't know how to use lynda.com or any of that. It's shutting a door.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, that a lot of people that could use the one-to-one, if you have social anxiety or if you don't know a lot about technology, you might be too shy to ask a question in a group and maybe look silly, or if you don't know how to use a trackpad, you may not want to ask that question because you see that everyone else is able to do that and you're so far outside of the group. And so it's sad. I guess it says something for the fact that most people know, they feel that most people now know how to use Apple products and this is no longer a necessity. But I felt like you did. I thought that was too bad, because it's so nice for people that you give them an Apple product and then you have this, which is like once a week. It came down to like dollars per session. You could not get that training, and it's so relieving for people that you could give the product and know that they would learn how to use it bit by piece, personalized in a kind, happy environment.
Oh well, we hope that there will be better and brighter things in the future. The opposite of that, of course, is the whole situation with content blockers, ad blockers, online advertising. It came up again this week because a lot of people started getting beta access to some of the iOS 9 content blockers, and some people chose to blog about it and show the difference. And the Next Web put up an article showing a bunch of popular sites, including iMore, what it looked like when you ran them with and without content blockers. And they're called content blockers and not ad blockers because they can block any arbitrary block of CSS or JavaScript. The most common usage is going to be ads, but Federico Vitici tweeted out some pictures where he was pulling out whole blocks of CSS that he considered that weren't content, and basically made it look like a reader view with nicer pictures. So people will be able to do a lot of things, like make Facebook look entirely different if they want to. There is some concern that it will break social networks, like you'll go to your Facebook page and you won't remember that you have a content blocker running and things won't work right, but there's Facebook apps for that. So I don't think that's going to be a huge concern. But we do sort of feel caught in the middle, because if given our druthers at iMore, we'd run no ads, or we'd run ads that were all fantastic. But as I mentioned before, we're not in charge of our ad destiny. That's all done through ad exchanges and stuff like that. And we kind of hope that this makes them improve better. But I'm just interested in general. I don't know if anyone else has any thoughts on this, but for me in general, it just feels like this feels like a very Apple-y thing, because there have been content blockers on Windows and on Mac and on, there have been some on Android, though apparently they're not as easy to use as I thought they were. You have to root Android and then install them, so not a lot of people do it. I just don't know how big and how damaging this is going to be, or maybe not damaging, maybe not the right word. I don't know how much this is going to actually push to make companies provide better ads.
Well, the problem is that once the ad blockers are in place, it's going to be hard for them to provide better ads that will be seen by anybody. So that's part of the issue. I love the Next Web story with the charts. I've also been using Crystal, the ad blocker that they tested with. It is it's very nice. It has no interface essentially at this point, and I think that that's one of the challenges for these app developers, is to work on ways that you can sort of say what you want to see and what you don't want to see, and have it. I think a content blocker that's like a preferences panel for the web of like, what do you want to see and what do you not want to see. It could end up not being quite as bad as we think. But on mobile devices, I mean, the charts don't lie. You're talking about reducing, like, let's take my old employer, Macworld, Serenity's old employer. The page load times were about like 16 seconds, and they went to something like 3.5. With Crystal installed, and it's spectacularly better. And so this isn't all about ads being annoying, although ads can be annoying. It's also about just improving the experience, and I think in the end, maybe we'll see some better ads, but I think it's also going to be that we're going to start to see a lot of native stuff. We're going to see in-content material, and we're going to see stories that are sponsored stories. And you know what? As long as they're not trying to pull a fast one on the readers and make it seem like a real story, as long as it's clear that this item is an ad in content form, I think it's probably okay. It's not my favorite thing, but I feel like that's what we're going to be left with when because this has been abused, all of the display ads are just going to go away. Even the ones that are not offensive, they're all going to go away.
I mean, that's the best case scenario. My nightmare scenario is run like a company like AT&T offering ultra cookie services to ad companies.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that a little bit. AT&T experimenting with injecting ads into its open Wi-Fi networks.
Yeah.
Which they're like, oh no, that was just a test. It's not actually really happening. We're not being security exploited.
And I think Verizon or AT&T were trying super cookies previously.
Yeah, it's that's a dangerous path to walk down. In regards to native advertising, which I think they'll at least give a good shot for. I'm not completely opposed to it. With it the caveat that it has to be done well. Because I look back to, I am a big fan of old time radio shows and things like that, and I look back to the sponsored troops of the 20s, the 30s, the 40s, and you had those little brought to you by Campbell Soup ads, and I mean even on podcasts. We have that, right? We have our podcasters talking about, all right, let's talk to you about Harry's. Let's talk to you about Linda. Let's talk to you about Squarespace. As long as it's very clear, John Gruber of Daring Fireball has been doing this for years with ad pitches in his RSS feed, but they're very clearly labeled. And I actually don't think that's a terrible thing. I gripe a lot about Facebook's crazy ad system and how terrible it makes it for page owners. But I've actually found, I have genuinely found some good things in Facebook's feed injection, because they're at this point, they're pretty conservative about what they put into your news feed. And they do collect creepy data on you, but at the same time, it's like, all right, okay, this is actually a product that I'm not horrified to see in my newsfeed. It's not like,
I made the mistake of telling him I was single, so now all I get is dating service
oh
ads.
Boy, yeah. I
gotta uncheck that box.
Yeah, every time you get around an anniversary of your relationship, by the way, the engagement ring ads start popping up. That's
oh man.
Really?
Well, at least that would help me remember my anniversary.
You haven't posted a
once
picture
you're
of
already married, Georgia, it doesn't count. Once you're already
okay.
married, although I bet they probably did
help me.
flowers. Yeah.
They're
You
like,
haven't posted a picture with your husband in a month. Would you like a divorce lawyer service?
So that's the creepy end of native advertising. Maybe we don't go down that route. We're not Facebook, but I do think that there's a happy medium that can be found with native advertising that genuinely produces interesting content that readers might want to click on, but is also well labeled as an ad and well labeled as like, this is helping support us, support them, help support us. Everybody's happy.
You mentioned support. I wanted to mention that too. I think one place this is going is every site that you read now that is not a huge traffic site, like huge, like BuzzFeed huge. I think you're going to see more stuff that people are going to ask to support via actual cash money, and that may be a special newsletter or a special membership area, or it may be just a tip jar. And maybe there are paywalls. I mean, people have been so opposed to paywalls, but at some point, the game on the web since the beginning has been give everything away because you'll get all the traffic that you can stand, and then you make money off that traffic by selling ads. But once the make money by selling ads part falls apart, the rules change, and so
the traffic's not important. Yeah,
it wouldn't shock me if you saw sites that are in the middle range pull back and say, we need you to give us money, and then we'll give you something in return, whether that's content that you are used to reading, or it's a newsletter, or it's something else. I feel like that is going to happen.
I'll perform for.
Dance.
But they
Renee,
do.
dance.
We'll sing
True,
more
right?
iMore songs. No, I really think. I mean, we've seen the explosion of Kickstarter and Patreon and GoFundMe's over the last few years. It's funny because I was in the arts industry the summer before Kickstarter, and the comparison between indie film artists trying to raise, or indie writers trying to raise money pre-Kickstarter, and now where it's like, hey, I'm going to start a Patreon, and all you need, they talk about the 1,000 true fans. All you need is a certain subset of people who like your content enough that they're willing to pitch in $5, $10 a month, and you can sustain yourself. Now, granted, that is primarily designed for smaller sites. I don't know what that looks like, whether that means that people are going to have to scale down to do what they do, whether we're going to look at more single proprietorships that have all hyper niche audiences. It's a long-term question, and also we can't discount the oncoming stampeding elephant that will soon be in the room. Apple News, and see if Apple has any revolutionary ideas on monetizing content without making readers want to cry.
iAds will be present.
iAds will be but here's the question: is like, are iAds going to be redesigned and redeveloped in such a way that it's not just here's another banner at the top of the thing?
They're going to generate any income on apps.
Yeah. I don't know. It's that I think we will have to wait until the release of news to find out.
So awkwardly now, I'm going to pause so we can pay some of those bills. And I'm going to do that by telling you about lynda.com, the online learning platform with over 3,000 on-demand video courses to help you strengthen your business, technology, and creative skills. For a free 10-day trial, you can visit lynda.com/iMore. What is Lynda? It is the closest thing you can get to in our world, to jacking into the matrix, to learning helicopter flying, kung fu. Well, maybe not helicopter flying and kung fu, but certainly things like Microsoft Office, like security essentials, like going paperless, tax fundamentals, growth hacking, almost photography, almost anything that interests you. You can go to lynda.com and you will find experts there who will teach it to you. These are people who are passionate about what they do. They stream thousands of video courses on demand, so you can learn at your own schedule. You can watch an entire course. If you have a question, you can just ask that question, find the bit of the course that addresses it, and just watch that. You can take the entire thing, bite-sized pieces. It really is up to you. You can create your own learning experience. There's transcripts. There's support for iOS, for iPhone, for iPad, for Android devices, so you can take stuff on the go. You can make playlists. It's just it is a customized on-demand learning experience. So you can use your lynda.com membership. It will give you unlimited access to training on hundreds of topics, all for one flat rate. Whether you're looking to become an industry expert, you're passionate about a hobby, or you want to learn something new, just go to lynda.com/iMore and sign up for your free 10-day trial. That's lynda.com/iMore, IMORE. All right, so we are moving into, as we mentioned before, the Apple event, and we're widely expecting to see, almost certainly expecting to see, a new iPhone. There are lots of rumors now. I wanted to break them down, starting with the most important one, Georgia, rose gold. Not pink, but rose gold.
If it's not pink and rose gold, I am all over that. I think that it's beautiful.
Like Apple Watch rose gold.
Yes, I think that it's going to be a nice seller. I think that it's going to be a great seller among men and women.
I'd probably get one.
Yeah. One is because we like to one is say I have the newest and greatest product. So I think that works really well for us to.
Georgia, not any gloating purposes, of course.
Pardon me?
And strictly aesthetically, I like it. I'm not going to do it to gloat or anything.
Right, of course not. You would never do that, Renee. I would never expect that of you.
My rose gold, like this, only rosy or gold, right?
Well, yes, exactly. No one's going to be using a case. I would be worried about breaking
more broken screens.
Right. Get AppleCare. But I think that that's the first thing, is that's going to be one of the differentiators that I have an S and you just have a 6. And I think that a lot of people enjoy that with their products. It's a fashion accessory as well. And so people like the newest, best, and the greatest. And it's a beautiful color. It's warm, which is really nice because this adds a warm color onto the color spectrum for the phones. And I think it's also classy, and if you have a rose gold watch, it matches.
Yeah, no, I agree completely. I think I think well, we said this on the last show. I think that Apple, traditionally made a lot of internal upgrades and thought people would be impressed by new cameras and new things like Touch ID, and it turns out we just wanted a new color. You scratch our surface, what do you find?
More surface.
More surface. Jason, does a new camera excite you? The idea of a 12-megapixel shooter? Does Apple need to go there now?
The more the better, I say. Phones are cameras. I mean, there are cameras now. I just on my road trip I just took for 10 days. I didn't take my SLR. I've got a very nice SLR. I left it in the drawer here because I didn't want to deal with another charger. I didn't want to deal with lugging it around. And we're going to go down to a windy, wet beach. Are we going to even take it with us? We would have left it in the car anyway, and then I would have worried about the camera being in the car. So our phones are our cameras now. So the better the camera, the better the product. And Apple has been on 8 megapixels for a while. Having a bigger sensor gives them more stuff. It gives them more pixels for image processing, and presumably, they will continue to build a lot of signal processing into the next generation chips that are inside these iPhones, and those are definitely the rumors. And so yeah, I'm excited. There's some talk about you might be able to shoot 4K video. That seems gratuitous on one level, and yet being able to shoot 1080 video seemed gratuitous, and then a few years later it doesn't seem that way anymore.
So post-production zooming, Jason.
Well, I keep thinking, yeah, you shoot a 4K video and then you can actually crop it to 1080 with image stabilization and have it look good. Also, filmmakers are already using iPhones to make films, and being able to shoot a 4K will be a thing that will happen for filmmakers too. So I think it's all good. I think having more sensor space to do image processing and stabilization, software stabilization essentially, I think that's all good too. So Apple has proven that they care a lot about the camera in the iPhone because everybody uses it and it's a key feature, and I'm excited to see them improve it. And likewise, looking at my daughter and how many selfies she takes, improving the front camera is also something they should probably keep doing.
Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah, Mark Gurman was all over, like as every year, he's been all over the rumors for the new devices. And one of the things, and I don't know if I was reading this right, but it looked like he was saying that Apple's using their own custom sensor this time and not sourcing them from Sony, which would be really interesting.
That is really interesting. I'm not surprised because they're manufacturing so much silicon at this point that I wouldn't be surprised if they were investigating building their own CMOS sensor. It's because they don't have the experience building a CMOS sensor, at least not a publicly on high demand. I would worry if they weren't partnering with somebody behind the scenes, at least with experience. I don't know. Have they really hired or acquired any companies recently that have experience building sensors? I know they had
PrimeSense.
Yeah, PrimeSense, but
and the other Israeli company with the multiple layered.
Yeah, with triple. So that they potentially have the hardware expertise to do it. if they did do it, it means, even greater connectivity with their software. It means that they have more flexibility about what they can get their cameras to do. But there also is the downside of, Sony has been manufacturing CMOS sensors for pretty much as long as there has been a CMOS sensor. I had a Sony camera 2002. Like, they've been going on a while.
I don't want to misquote Mark. So what he says is they're moving from an 8-megapixel sensor to a custom imager built as a 12-megapixel in both the new iPhones. Now, it could also be the way they did with the Apple chips. They made an A4 chip, which was designed by Apple, but it still used reference designs. It wasn't an Apple-only IP. And then a couple of years later, they designed their own chip. They moved from sort of packaging other parts, and it could just be that they're doing something where they take the sensor, and instead of taking the whole package, they're making their package around it. But it's interesting that Apple, as is their wants to get further detailed into this. The other thing, George, is still more force touch rumors, but also motion wallpapers, like on your iPhone. The little squids and things could float, not squids, sorry, jellyfish could float around your screen.
I'm really excited about that. I think I'm one of the few people that loved having, like, a butterfly or a jellyfish, and I loved when I got to show off my watch. Everyone was in awe of seeing the jellyfish as it I won't say floats, but swims across your screen. And I would love to have a animated wallpaper when I unlock my phone.
Do they
so
need
I'm
OLED
really
for
excited
this?
about
I mean, the Apple is moving to like they did OLED on the Apple Watch. They are going to move apparently to OLED on the phones. They're going to make up a dark theme and all this stuff. But that might not be now. An S model, they don't usually make big technological leaps on the displays. And would it work on a LCD display, or would it look like a poor jellyfish on a gray background?
No, I mean, I think an animation would still look nice. It may not have the same kind of crisp clarity that you'd see on an Apple Watch, but it's still going to look great. I mean, they've already experimented with the idea of semi-animated wallpaper with parallax, where it kind of moves as you move your phone around. True animation might get people less motion sick because it doesn't actually feel like the ground is tilting while you move your phone. But yeah, I don't think there should be too big of a problem. OLED.
We're already used to it.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
We're used to it on the watch. Those of people who have seen it. The other thing in that sort of area is OLED. I think is still too expensive for full screen usage for the price points that they want. It's getting there.
Their biggest concern traditionally was that other companies were willing to sacrifice on the quality of the display. Like they'd use things like pentile subpixel alignments, and they would use with the latest generation are getting really, really good, but the capacity for companies to make them is still limited. And a lot of those companies like Samsung, who makes them, use them, a lot of them on their own phones.
So they don't want to get channel delayed.
Yeah, and they won't use inferior technology. They're going to want the best of the best OLED displays ever conceived of by man or scientist.
Yes.
I'm implying that scientists aren't men.
I wanted to point out that you can today use dynamic wallpaper, but it's just the bubbles and the colors that's in iOS that you can. So if you want to see something moving on your lock screen, you can do it if it's bubbles.
It's bubbles, all the bubbles. Anyone have any thoughts on the Apple TV? We've heard the Apple TV. We've heard all the rumors that it's going to have a higher end processor, probably an Apple A8. It's going to be able to maybe do Siri, so you can command everything from your living room the way you can with an Amazon Echo. It's going to have a redesigned controller with some buttons on it, but also a touchpad, and maybe it'll be working for gaming. And it could have an app store. Is there any big selling point for you, Jason?
Well, I mean, the hardware needed to be refreshed. I think that if it's got an app store and games, it's going to be exciting. I think if it's got integration, with my home network or with Siri, I think having seen the Amazon Echo in action, I like the idea of having a device that could potentially listen to your voice commands wherever you are in your house. It's unclear whether Apple will do that or it'll just be embedded in the remote, like what Amazon has done with their Fire TV stuff. But I feel like having more encroachment into the home is a good idea for Apple, and the Apple TV seems like not a bad place to do that, although they probably should put it in the airport-based station at some point too, because not everybody needs to attach a thing to a TV. But yeah, this hardware is old. I mean, they've done some stealth revisions to it, but it's not dramatically different, and the interface is not dramatically different from a few years ago. And in that time, their competitors have really done a lot of work to create clever, small, powerful devices that attach to a big screen. So I'm excited to see what they're doing, and I will be disappointed. I don't need them to do a revolutionary TV service in order for me to be excited here, but I'll be disappointed if there aren't a lot of new features, if it's just like, you know, it's a new box that looks a little different, but you know, it needs to have something. And is that home feed? Are those home features? Is that an app store? I think an app store would be huge and make a much more interesting product if developers could leverage their knowledge of iOS to build apps that run on the Apple TV.
I still don't know how they price it though, because if you start putting an an A9 for sure, but even an A8 in it, and you start putting a bunch of extra RAM and memory and blah 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 to handle all this stuff, you're not a $69 box. Might not even be a $99 box anymore.
And the competition is cheap, right? I mean, but the fact is, you can run apps on the Amazon Fire TV, and that's a cheap box, and the Fire Stick, and that's a super cheap thing that's not even a box. So I mean, they've got to play in that. The good thing is they've got a whole set of processors going back a couple of years. They don't need it to be the latest and greatest processor in order to drive a TV interface. They could put something in there that's pretty old in terms of iPad and iPhone and have it still be plenty good enough to drive what they need to do on the TV.
Do they need an iTunes 4K, Ren?
I don't think they need one right now. I think that they will probably end up building up one either beginning this year, saying, oh, well, we have these 5 titles available in 4K. But next year, I think, will be the really big rollout. 4K TVs this year have finally dropped to the point where they are affordable for most users. The 4K standard, you know, people are pretty much agreed on the what that content should look like. It's just a matter of whether or not they can get a big enough collection, and whether or not the people that they're delivering it to have the bandwidth to view it in 4K, because the 4K file is going to be significantly bigger than your 1080p or 720p.
We've got it down to twice the size, but that's still twice the size.
Yeah, it's still twice the size, and if you have a slow connection or poor bandwidth, you're looking at a little bit tougher of a sell for most users.
Yeah, I have a 4K TV, and it's got Netflix's 4K service built into it, and you know, the picture looks good. It streams pretty well. You're essentially going from 1080 to 2160p. Obviously, it's heavily compressed, but it does look better than the compressed 1080. It gives you a step up. You could argue that maybe the next step up would just be a less compressed 1080 stream, and I'm not sure it looks that much better than a less compressed 1080 stream. Still, it's something that's out there. Wouldn't
HDR from Syracuse.
support it, but does Apple want to be ahead of the game here, or does Apple want to wait? Because maybe Apple wants to wait. That is a game Apple usually plays, which is, let's let this settle down. We don't need to be fully embracing this thing that's not settled down yet.
Georgia, do you have any qualms about having an open Siri mic in your living room?
I do. It's something I wouldn't turn on. It just bothers me. It creeps
It's
me
so
out
convenient.
It is, but I just don't like the thought of my phone, my computer, my TV listening to me waiting for a command. I would have to get more comfortable with it, and then I go through all of the different privacy concerns. I know Apple's really good about that, but I don't know. I think the creep factor is too great.
If you had to press a button on the Apple remote before you could use Siri, would that assuage you? Like an actual hardware button?
I would be okay with that then. Then
Yeah.
I would be fine.
I mean, when you think about it, currently, the way that the Ahoy telephone function works on, I almost said it, and I didn't. The way that the automatic Siri function works on your iPhone is it's plugged in, and then it only listens for the key commands. Hey, Ahoy telephone.
Okay.
I'm going to try not to anger any of our podcast listeners today. So I imagine if it's going to be put into the Apple TV, we're going to see the same sort of functionality where it's only going to be listening for those key phrases. However, it's still a little creepy. You know, even with Apple's privacy record, having Apple be like, yes, we only listen for these 2 phrases, still doesn't mean that someone can't figure out how to hack the box to listen for more than those phrases.
No, famously, and I'm still not going to mention any names, a very well-known reporter started DMing me just because there was Google Glass in their bag as they were walking down the street. So, I mean, these things happen, right? It's technology.
Yeah.
So to wrap up, I'm going to just do a quick bunch of Q&A because we did get some questions.
Ask iMore.
And one of the things, we got some complaints last week. Last week we talked about Ashley Madison and I always blank on the name, Spotify and Apple in terms of privacy. And we got some people saying that they would never, ever, not ever listen to the show again. And that always surprises me because if you disagree with a point of view, just yell at us. We'd love to have the conversation with you. I don't think there's any conversation that we'd address on this show that is an all or nothing thing. So they took issue with the fact that if you look at a pure privacy model, law enforcement has been going around, and I personally think this is terrible, and telling people that if you have secure encrypted connections, you're allowing the worst of the worst criminals to get away with doing the most horrific crimes possible. And that is the definition of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And if you say that companies like Apple and Google who want secure encrypted connections are doing the right thing, inevitably some people think that you're pro-crime or pro-criminals. And that's the furthest thing from the truth. The thing is that those people are going to use encryption anyway. Total encryption is incredibly easy. It takes no effort anymore. They will continue to use it. It's just normal people will have no protection against being hacked by those people who are very safe and secure. So if you think we're wrong about something, please just yell at us. If you want to write us long letters telling us why we're horrible people because we happen to have a different set of beliefs, that's fine too, but we're happy to discuss it with you. The next thing we're getting is a bunch of people have been asking us whether they should buy new Macs now or wait till after the event. I would suggest, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, wait till after October. That is your best point for if you can wait.
If you can. If you're not writing your thesis and you need a Mac, immediately borrow one and then wait because, it always happens. You buy a Mac and then you're like, ooh, if I'd only waited a little while. Wait a little while if you can. Think further ahead of the game. It's always a little bit more fabulous and you'll be like, I wish I had that one.
Yep. If your computer is not dying,
yeah,
be okay.
All right, so two quick questions. Serenity, what project managing app do we use for iMore? We've mentioned it, but they can't remember.
We use an app, technically it's a web service called Trello, Trello, which is wonderful. It allows you to organize your to-dos by cards and lists and sections. You can move those around really easily. You can assign people to them. You can assign due dates to them. You can track and subscribe specific threads if you don't care about the overall board, but you just care about these, 5 specific areas. And it's so popular that my dogs like it too. No, we really
like it.
That's an
endorsement.
Yeah, exactly. We really like it and we dig it.
It's actually fun. It's actually a fun interface and I don't I'm change adverse to something that might be really, really scary to look at and seems like if you press a button something bad's going to happen. And Trello is none of that. It's actually really, really cute. It's like playing cards.
Trello, yeah, I appreciate.
Oh, we got frozen Ren. I'll move on quickly. Brett wants to know if we have any recommendations for Mac software that converts FLAC to AAC. Jason, do you have any favorites?
Oh my God, I have
audio converters.
Oh, I don't even know the name of it. I used something to do this when I had a bunch of FLAC stuff and needed to convert it, and now for the life of me, I can't even remember what it was. I feel terrible.
I think the one I use is called Pro Audio Converter, and I just did that because Logic refuses to bounce anything longer than an hour. And then I get it in that awful CAD file and have to convert it to an AIF.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's what I've been using. But I will do some investigations on this, and I will supply people with better, truer answers. All right. In the meantime,
I think Max is what I used.
Max.
MAX. So people should check that out and search for Max. I think that's what I used. It's not a great interface, but I believe it will convert your FLAC files to other formats.
Awesome. And Jason has been writing a series of terrific articles on doing all sorts of audio stuff, specifically for podcasters, but it's valuable to anyone who works with any kind of speech, I think, related audio.
Thank you.
Serenity's internet went down, so they heard us talking about encryption, and they just took her off the internet.
Mm-hmm.
So, Jason, if people are interested in reading more of your in-depth, insightful coverage, where can they go?
You can find my coverage at sixcolors.com. I was going to say something self-deprecating there, but thank you for saying that it's insightful. Sixcolors.com, and then they can listen to me talk about technology stuff on the Upgrade podcast and the Clockwise podcast, which are at relay.fm, and I talk about all sorts of geeky pop culture-y stuff on a bunch of different podcasts at theincomparable.com, including Total Party Kill, the Dungeons and Dragons podcast, where we play D&D, and Georgia is one of our players. So, and as am I.
Yeah, so much fun.
Yeah, so check it out.
They needed Techiesis wasn't available. They needed a different Queen of Darkness. That's how that worked out. Yeah, no, and it is absolutely terrific stuff. So please do make sure that you check out all of it. And Relay FM is celebrating a birthday, so happy birthday to Relay FM. We might have coincidentally gotten Stephen Hackett to write an article on Apple history for us earlier this week, and Mike Hurley might be writing something for us later today, just purely coincidentally during their birthday week. I like how that works out. But happy birthday to all of you. You do terrific shows. Georgia, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter. It's at Georgia_Dow. I do some anxiety videos. If you or someone you know has anxiety and they're too shy or they can't afford to go get treatment for that, we have launched some videos that you can watch at the comfort of your own home, and that's at anxiety-videos.com.
Awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
You can find Serenity, if she was here, at Settern, SETTERN, and she has the awesome Apple Music book out on the iBook Store and the Kindle bookstore right now. So just go take a look for either Apple Music Ultimate Guide or iMore editors in your book, your ebook app of choice, and it should be there. And you can find her regularly on iMore. You can find me at Renee Ritchie. You can find all of us at iMore. If you haven't already, please go to iTunes, check us out. If you want the video version, which you can see Georgia rolling her eyes at me in live action, just go to youtube.com/iMore video. Jason, thank you so much for joining us.
Happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
And I might see you in 2 weeks.
Yeah, hopefully see you in early September.